You put yourself in the trap. And that's a really, really hard thing for us to do. And like when it comes to relationships, part of that is saying, wow, I picked this person out. I had my choice of all the people in the world or being by myself. I made a choice. And no matter what it is, it's always our choice what we pick out, even though it may not seem like that. The next thing is owning that we want to change, but we're not willing to change. It's we all know the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. And I have 4 kids. I am coaching them the best I can all the time. I am helping them the best I can all the time. And at the end of the day, it generally doesn't do any good for them, and it doesn't do any good for me. And I always walk away, wow, I did all of this for you. I helped you with all of that. What happened? And it's because I keep having the same approach and expecting a different result. And that's what we have to get out of. You have to own that we need to be different to achieve a different result. And that is a lot of hard work. And one of the reasons it's so much hard work is that in my belief system, enlightenment is never anything that we own. We only rent it. You know, you could be on the top of your game and everything, feel fabulous about what's going on around you. Someone comes along who you haven't seen in a long time and say, wow, you look like you're not feeling well. Whatever your enlightenment is out the door. Someone tells you you're fat, you're thin, you're this, you're that. All of your enlightenment, for most all of us, is gone right there. And then you have to rebuild it. It's kind of like that game we see at amusement parks, where you whack the mole. It's like whack-a-mole. Everything in life is whack-a-mole. There's another mole, if not hourly or minutely, every couple of weeks. You have no choice but to whack that mole. Only the way you whack the mole in real life is by distinguishing it. We don't have a mallet to hit anyone, but if you find that an insult makes you lose all your power, the understanding is to, where that voice in your head gets to the point where it can say, wow, someone said someone doesn't like me, so what? You then own your power. You've whacked that mole by distinguishing it as opposed to whacking that person with a real mallet. One of the things that keeps us in that prison cell is really, really being afraid to make change. And there's there's familiar pain and there is unfamiliar pain. And making change has to do with that. We get, there's many stories I'm sure you've all heard about in the Holocaust, where some of the Jews were hiding, and some literally hid in sewer systems. And they got used to the smell of the sewer system, and that was a more familiar pain they could tolerate than the idea of being in the open and getting incarcerated, getting killed. So we can, as a species, we can really adapt to almost anything. And then the question comes, okay, we know what we got, we don't know what we're going to get. And it's like that person in the sewer system, they know that they have a terrible, terrible smell around them. Everything is the worst you could imagine, but it's still better than getting killed. And until we're willing to get out of that familiar pain and to take our chance on unfamiliar pain, something we don't yet experience, we are just doomed to the prison cell. You can't get out of the prison cell if you're not willing to see what's on the road. Before we get out of that prison cell, for most of us, that breakdown has to be really, really bad. Because there are, we are all in belief systems that they're just part of who we are. It's like, I'm okay with these kind of people, I'm okay with this kind of food. Like at a personal level, I don't eat sushi. I don't think, it's like, who knows why? I used to not eat crab, now I love crab. But I'm in that old belief system, and it's hard for me to get into the new one. When you go to that new place, you're entering new territory. New territory is always scary. We have a voice in our head, the voice in our head has one main job, and that's survival. The dysfunctional patterns we have all come from a recording system we have that from childhood, from very earliest of childhood, we come with an empty canvas. And my way of looking at that voice in the head, now by the way, the voice in the head is pretty much talking to every one of us close to 24/7. And by a show of hands, how many of you in the room think the voice in the head is you? Okay, how many of you think the voice in the head is just a voice in the head and it's not you? Okay. The voice in the head is not us. The voice in the head is our control system. The voice in the head is like the GPS in our car. The difference is that when, at a biblical way in the Old Testament, we have a point of view that in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were having a fabulous time. There was absolutely nothing wrong. They lived forever. They had the best food you can imagine. Everything was perfect. All of a sudden, one day, the serpent serves up the apple from the tree of knowledge. The boss of the place had said, no fruit. They ate the fruit, thrown out of the thrown out of the Garden of Eden, and now outside of the Garden of Eden, the rules were different. Where there was immortality in the Garden of Eden, where there was plenty of everything in the Garden of Eden, now they're outside the Garden of Eden, and it's scary. There are predators that can get them. Somebody has to find the food for them. So all of a sudden, a system was defined, which was never needed, which is that voice in our head. With the voice in our head, when we were probably a couple of thousand years ago, when we were still what we think of as the caveman stage, humans lived in small groups of 20 or 30 people. And they were hunters and gatherers. You couldn't grow your own food. We didn't understand agriculture. And you had your predators like the woolly mammoth. And if one of those woolly mammoths came around, you by yourself couldn't do a damn thing about it, because that woolly mammoth weighed tons, and you just weighed, like, I assume, 100 or so many pounds. But if you had your group of 20 or 30, you could handle the woolly mammoth with lots of things. If you had your group of 20 or 30, if there's no food to find, everybody goes out in a different direction, agrees to come back in a little while. They share who found the food, and then the group goes to get the food. So with the group, you could survive. If the group gets mad at you and says, you're out of my group, you're dead. You can't survive on your own. So thousands of years ago is when the cortex of our mind, that's called the reptilian cortex, we're probably still running about the same way. And with that, that voice in our head has one job, which is survival, and the job is not to be thrown out of your tribe. It's to live. So the people in the tribe, many of them, like, we're still in that way. We still march to that same drummer today. I'm pretty sure that probably 80% of you have a PDA in your pocket, and with the PDA, you probably get emails and cell phone calls. I think most of us are now in a place where before we go to sleep, we check our emails and we check our phone calls. Why do we do that? If you're a kid, there was a statistic the other day that girls are sending, give or take, 100 texts a day, and young boys are sending about 60 texts a day. Why do they do that? And the reason is the woolly mammoth. You want to stay in good stead with your tribe. I know at a level of a businessman, if I send an email to the guys that work in my business and say, what about this? If I don't get an answer in a relatively reasonable period of time, I say, these guys don't care about their job. Same thing. It's you have to be with your woolly mammoth tribe. That part of our reptilian brain is working 24/7. And that voice in our head is trying to keep us in good stead constantly. You either stay popular or you're dead. Now, like, we have ways of staying popular that are very bizarre. Like, you find bullies that will say, I'm going to, like, terrorize you because you cannot throw me out of your tribe if you're scared to death of me. We have people in that woolly mammoth tribe that do it by being people pleasers. Everybody has their strategy, but that voice in our head is telling us all the time. The voice in our head is a combination of hardware and software. When we're born, we have what we know as our brain. The brain is relatively unprogrammed. If you put your hand as a baby on a hot on something hot, you're going to pull it away. Those are reflexes that, as we all remember how computers were first sold, they were sold bundled and unbundled. And the bundling would be, today you'd get Microsoft Word with the bundle, but you wouldn't get any programs. So the bundling of certain things that are physical reactions, those things come with the bundling. The rest of them, we program ourselves along the way. So that voice in our head is recording everything we